Week in History with Mike and Will. I'm Mike.
I'm Will.
And we are dressed as our favorite craft work. Thanks for coming. If it's the first time joining us here, what we do is every week Will picks an event that took place in history on this week, and then he's got 1 hour to explain that event to me. This week's event is a person.
A person.
Which I cannot pronounce.
His full name is Gottfried von Berlichingen, but everyone calls him Guts.
Guts.
It's G-O with the umlaut over it, T-Z, and that's pronounced like Guts.
If they've clicked this show, they could see it.
You'll see it. It's right there.
Anyway, we're going to learn about that guy.
That's a umlaut.
Okay. Something happened. Either he was born or died on July 23rd, 1562.
Yep.
All right. You ready, Will?
I'm ready, Mike.
All
All right. So, it's not his birthday because Gottfried von Berlichingen was born 15 November-ish, 1480.
Okay.
To a Kilian von Berlichingen, that's his daddy, and his mother, Margaret von Thüngen. Thüngen.
Right.
In the town of Schontal, which is, it's probably pronounced Schontal, because it's S-C-H.
Where are we?
With an umlaut,
Yeah, okay.
N-T-A-L, and that's in Baden-Württemberg nowadays in Germany.
Germany, all right.
Germany.
It's all the
I
bottom
had to-
line there.
I had to work through all of it so we know specifically where in Germany we are.
Okay.
Now, the reason we're going to talk about Guts today is because I'm just probably going to call him Guts because that's how it's spelled.
All right.
But Guts is a very common pronunciation. Guts. It's like a Guts. It's very German. It's very, very German with the umlaut, and we don't have any words like it in English that have that sound, really.
If someone out there has a pronunciation tip for us, let us know.
I did listen to it, and it's pronounced Guts.
Yeah.
It's like Guts. There's almost a y in it.
Yeah.
It's a difficult, but I'll probably just pronounce it Guts.
Okay.
Guts. So Guts was born in a very interesting time in Europe.
Okay.
He's in a noble family, so there are certain expectations of him, what he's going to do, what he's capable of, whether he can be wealthy and powerful, or he can end up poor too, because he's not a super wealthy noble. So his fortune isn't set in stone. He can kind of go either way.
All right.
Now, at this time, Germany is not Germany. It's the Holy Roman Empire.
Right.
And it is a huge network of kingdoms and principalities. Eventually, it merges with Spain. It's a whole. It's usually reduced to being called a mess because it's so complicated. It's not actually a mess. It's just as long as you're around in the times, you kind of know where things fit. And this is one of those rare instances where the peasants actually do know what's going on a lot of the time.
Oh.
Because who they work for and the lands that they're under have like all of these intricate relationships with the people around them. And feuds are a very real thing. And feud is not like what we call a feud nowadays, where it's just an argument. These are blood feuds where there is open warfare between villagers, just like individual neighbors, and then all the way up to these principalities. And they will go straight up at war with each other.
Are we fighting with guns now?
That's the tricky bit. Now we're starting to develop gunpowder.
Oh boy.
So we have these knights in armor, which it's all plate armor, and it's very, very intricate. And they've managed to figure out how to make it quickly, because they use like blast furnaces to heat the metal faster. It's more efficient now. They have all sorts of systems of how to adjust the armor, and it's become more of a science instead of an art.
Okay.
It used to be like a very artistic, each armorer, and still the best armorers were like this, where it was custom crafted per person to fit them perfectly, which is awesome. Because then you move and it's part of you. It fits you perfectly. It's heavy.
Feels good.
But it's like, yeah, this is great. Instead of like where chainmail just hangs on your shoulders.
Yeah.
And that's it. So you've got 50 pounds of steel hanging off your body. You're like,
For that slouchy look.
yeah. So you had to be really strong. Nowadays, I mean, you still have to be strong and capable, but it allows these guys to do a lot more fluidity of motion. They can dance in it, basically, and it's not a big deal. They can mount their horse without assistance. So there's always these, in like older movies, they show the guys being lifted onto their horse with like a hook or something. That was not ever a thing.
Ever?
It's not a thing.
Oh.
They might, like, if you were old or out of shape, you might need somebody to help you onto the horse, maybe a step. But it was considered like an individual task is what we would have called it in the Army, where it was required. You were expected to be able to do this. If
Yeah.
you couldn't do this, then
Shouldn't be a knight.
you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
So, but you're at this point where
I bet the horse agrees too.
the horse, yeah, dude, seriously,
If you're too heavy to get on here,
yeah, the horse.
maybe you're too heavy to get on here.
Could you not? And now, too, an important thing too is horses then are slightly different than horses now in that they were bred for war. So you got a horse almost the size of like a Clydesdale, which is just a massive draft horse, but has the maneuverability of a smaller horse
Oh.
and is trained for ferocity. So these things are mean. Like they were trained to like fight.
Mean
They'd bite
horses.
people, they'd kick people, they were nasty, but not towards their owner.
Right.
Like that was the tricky bit, is getting this horse that is perfectly in tune with what you're doing, because a lot of the time you're just guiding it with your knees because you've got your hands full with weapons.
Yeah.
By now, the shield is not a popular or necessary implement anymore.
No,
Armor
when-
is so good,
Shielded
you
everywhere.
don't need a shield. Yeah,
Right.
your whole body is a shield. The steel is thicker and stronger, but because it has a higher carbon component, it's not as heavy as it used to be.
Okay.
And the weight is much more evenly distributed. So you can wear 60 pounds of armor, and it feels like you're wearing 10 pounds. Now, the problem is...
All right, I'll buy the armor.
You'll buy
Enough.
The,
You
yeah,
sold
yeah,
me
I
on the
sold
armor.
you on the armor. But the thing, too, is it doesn't mitigate heat.
Mm.
So if it's hot, and then you've got all this
Oh
padding
no! I
under
just
it.
bought the armor.
You
Why
bought
did
the
I-
armor, so
Shoot.
it still gets very hot. So you have to be careful about overheating, overexerting. So that's always the thing with the armor is you want a helmet that protects you but allows you to breathe efficiently. You
Yeah.
see some of these things, and like in the Crusades, they have these big bucket helmets, and some of them just have little holes in them. Eventually, you start getting like these slits in the armor so that you breathe more easily. They started to think about, well, what is an active target? What are people going to try to hit? So we want to protect that and leave other places more exposed so that there's
It's
some
lighter,
breathability, it's lighter. And also, with the advent of the gun, this is no longer, originally these were created as artillery pieces.
Yeah.
If you got hit by an artillery piece, you're just dead. It's no different than getting hit by a catapult that's throwing a 400-pound rock or a 10-pound cannonball being fired by gunpowder. If it hits you, you die.
Yeah.
But now we've got hand weapons. We've got handguns, is what they called them originally. Spelled G-O-N-N-E, is a gun. And it was this
G-O-N-N-E.
big, chunky thing that you could fire a couple times, and it might blow up in your hand. Then that started to develop more into the musket, which was heavy but not but much more portable. It was more easily used. This time we're having mostly what's called an arquebus, but they just usually called them guns.
I bet people would be more hesitant to use guns if they
Could blow up.
sometimes blow up in your hand.
Yeah, yep. And
Really think it through. I mean,
really like, don't
do I want to shoot this person?
Is it worth it?
Or I lose my hand.
And these things are easy to train, easy to use. It's point and click. Guns.
Trained to use the gun.
Yeah, train to use a gun.
Yeah.
You can't train the gun to shoot somebody
That's
for you.
what-
You gotta
yeah,
have the
that's
guy.
right. Guns don't kill people.
People kill people. Right. Guns just make it super duper easy. So you have these trained knights who spend their entire lives becoming warriors, and then you just throw a gun to a peasant, and they can kill
Oh,
the knight.
man.
maybe.
I trained all my life.
I trained all my life to get killed by a peasant, which still happened. You know, you get enough of peasants with pitchforks dragging you off your horse.
Oh, sure.
You're dead. So you've got these guns coming out, and they're hand portable, but they don't have like bullets nowadays where they have like a specific charge of gunpowder and a little blasting cap, and then the bullet's pointy and it made to penetrate stuff. These
Yeah.
are like a lead ball, sometimes as big as like an inch around, so you know, big ball, with kind of a varying amount of powder in it.
Oh, do you load it each time?
You load it each time.
Okay.
Eventually, later on, they'll start to develop things where they have like a flask of powders so that it's measured out beforehand,
Oh,
and they
nice.
go, oh, this much exactly. But
A
otherwise,
little gun cocktail.
yeah, exactly. Like this flask, and you put the cork back, and then the ball, and then kaboom. And then eventually they start adding like wadding into it to
Yeah.
make it pack down tighter so the ball doesn't just roll out, which could happen.
That's embarrassing.
Poof. Oh no!
Please reload.
That sucked.
Stab.
So this isn't a super efficient system. You put in too much powder, the gun blows up. You put in not enough powder, and the bullet just kind of goes flip.
Yeah.
Because of that, armor was made to be literally bullet proof, and they call that bullet proofing because they shoot the armor and it is proof against the bullet. It stops it. And some armorers would literally take a breastplate and shoot it to show the buyer it'll stop a bullet.
Yeah.
And then you get this breastplate that has like a bullet
little dent in it.
in it, and you're like, yeah, it's been tested, it works, and you hope
Okay,
the
good.
whole armor is equal.
Right.
Because
Yeah,
again, with mass production, quality tends to drop.
Sure.
You know, you had this custom-made specialist in Milan. Those apparently were the best armorers of the day.
Yeah.
They were specialists. They make
Milan.
Milan. They were fashionable always, even in armor. They made amazing suits of armor.
Must be the weather.
Must be. I think it might be.
I'll
It's
look it
just
up.
Milan is just so nice. It's like, we want comfort, we
Let's
want
just
style,
be
and we
it.
got good food. Welcome to
Yeah.
Milan. But Milanese armor was very popular amongst the wealthy. And that was like, if you got armor made in Milan by their smiths.
Yeah.
And they were controlled about this. Like, you didn't get, there was no shoddy guy, like no off-brand Milan smith guy.
The back
there
alleys of
was a
Milan.
guild where they would go around and it all had to be maintained at the
Okay.
same level. They would run you out of town or probably have a feud against you if you were making shoddy craftsmanship because it makes the whole city look bad.
All right. Quality
So,
control. Good.
Prestige and quality control, hugely important. Regulation, a little bit, just to make sure everybody's doing the right thing. Because you don't want somebody like, I got this armor in Milan, look how great it is, and the gold's flaking off, and somebody pokes you with a stick and you die, and you're like, well, that was garbage. Milan sucks, and then Milan loses all their business.
Yeah. Okay.
So you had these guys make these custom pieces, and then you had guys make more like mass-produced stuff.
Sure.
But that still had to be made to a standard. And the wealthier the guy, the better the armor. You know, you want a combination of light and protective. It's like this horrifyingly complex balance all the time. I want to be as protected as humanly possible. Okay, here's 80 pounds of metal. I want to be able to move. Here's 40 pounds of metal. I want it to stop a bullet. Here's 50 pounds. Like,
Yeah.
it's all custom tailored depending on what you needed. So those could stop bullets mostly, but the problem is you still had weak spots,
Right.
and you've got cannons. That no armor stops that.
Technically a bullet,
Technically, a
but
bullet,
too big.
really big bullet. You also still have crossbows because they are easier now to load. They don't have the old. They have these Kranikin style where you had this
Yeah.
big crank. Now they have like a pullback. You still had to be strong to do it. But because most people are wearing armor now, you can just brace it against like your breastplate,
Oh.
pull the string back, put the bolt on, and shlunk, fire away.
Schlunk.
It's a lot easier to use and a lot more accurate than a longbow is.
Okay.
As far as like a standard person using it, an expert with a longbow is way more dangerous than somebody with a crossbow. They can fire faster, they can fire more accurately, and
Even close spaces.
that's the difference too.
Okay.
If you're in close spaces, crossbow's awesome.
Yeah.
Longbow, you got to.
Yeah.
So we also have the advent of the pike again, big spears. Now we used
The
to see
advent of the pike
the advent
again.
of the pike. So the re-advent,
Okay.
the reuse of the pike.
Okay.
I used advent twice now. I feel like I've overused it.
Yeah.
I can't use it anymore.
I think you might be using it wrong.
I did. Yeah, it's the advent of the pike and shot, I should have said.
Oh.
It's the advent of the pike and shot formation. This idea is that you have a bunch of guys with pointed sticks in a little ball, and you have guys with guns and crossbows inside that,
Oh.
and it's basically unassailable by cavalry. You
Yeah.
start riding towards that, and the horse is like, I'm
Pokey.
out. It's
A pointed stick.
It's pointed stick. It's death.
Yeah.
And then also now people are shooting at me, and then
I'm just a horse.
there was an entire branch of soldiers called the Landsknechts, pictured here. I think I've talked about them before, but they had this
Lands-
very loud, and it's so bright and colorful that you would describe their outfits as loud. Slashed clothing, so like the sleeves are all poofy, but it's yellow and then slashed, so you can see the white and the red under it. And they had poofy pants and
poofy pants.
huge hats with big feathers and giant two-handed swords.
Okay.
And they were terrifying. And then they usually
But
wear like a
also
breastplate.
fabulous.
They were fabulous. They were the most outlandish costumes to war. I have no idea why.
Wow.
It was like this
I don't even
ostentatious.
feel bad getting killed by this guy. It's
Look how
just
good he
amazing.
looks. It's just incredibly
It's like a party.
vibrant. And these were
Okay.
these Swiss
Swish. Swiss.
soldiers. So nowadays the Pope has the Swiss
yeah,
Guard.
yeah.
So you've seen how those guys
Yeah.
dress. Those were originally
Those guys dressed like this.
this. And those guys were from the Landsknecht. They
Okay.
were part of these warriors who were like free men who believed in a free Switzerland, and they became mercenaries because they were so good at fighting that everybody started hiring them.
Yeah.
And then the Germans started
And they're easy to find.
Yes. Where are the Lands? Oh, yeah.
There's that guy. All right.
I can see them on the mountain 6 miles away because they're all wearing red and yellow and blue and just all these
Fabulous.
just fabulous colors. Like the camps must have been so much fun. And then like you've got a booming dyeing industry probably. They're like, oh, the Landsknechts are coming. Let's make all this colorful fabric. Come on down, guys. And we sold all of the cloth because it's good for business. So the Landsknecht were originally Swiss, and they basically fought to be free of German rule. And
Okay.
like right in the middle of the Holy Roman Empire, like, no, we don't want anything to do with
And
that.
they got the mountains around them
Yep,
too.
yep. So they've got the Alps
kinda do what they
surrounding
want.
them, and everybody just couldn't beat their armies overall. Like they'd win some battles, win some wars, but
Sure, sure.
overall, the Swiss eventually earned their own independence and became kind of this free republic, which is why to this day, Switzerland is its own country because they're like, no, we don't want, no,
Good job,
we're
Switzerland.
done. But they still had all these guys who were really good at fighting. So what Switzerland did is they said, well, we're not going to invade, but our soldiers are open to being hired.
Oh.
And the Germans started to use a lot of Landsknechts, and they thought a lot of their fighting style. So they started to adopt the tactics, and pretty soon throughout all of Europe, you have this pike and shot style of fighting where you have mixed formations of different types of weapons, and then you still have like a good cavalry arm to charge in because that's still terrifying for normal infantry.
Sure.
And it's this kind of a crazy mishmash because we're transitioning from old medieval warfare into modern warfare.
Yeah.
So we're at this wild in the middle thing where a knight can still be a knight and ride around on horseback with a sword.
Back when a
And
knight could be a knight.
Knight can be a knight and he can still be effective, but also a peasant could work his way up as a famous soldier by doing good service. It's a very fluid time. They're not as strict about where everybody fits on the scale,
Okay.
which is kind of neat. Now, also a contemporary of Guts's is one. I should have written down his name, but I didn't. He's coming up during the time of like a lot of really famous German knights, and I don't want to leave any of them out. And I also, again, I forgot to write down the guy's name.
I thank you all. I don't want to leave anyone out. So I'd like
But
to thank my agent.
Basically, the guy who's considered the founder of the Landsknechts is. I'm actually going to look his name up. 'Cause
Mr. Landsknecht.
Mr. Landsknecht.
Please.
That was
My
not
father
it.
was
My
Mr.
father was
Landsknecht.
Mr. Landsknecht.
Call me Bjorn.
Well, I think his name was Franz or Frederick. It was a Fra. It was a Fra.
Feel free to comment and tell
Thank you.
Will
Yeah,
how
and
he's wrong.
Tell me how I'm wrong. I can't believe I didn't write his name down. This guy's fascinating. So, I know we're already. I have to explain all this so
That's
we know
fine.
where we're
I'm
coming.
just letting you know where you are.
I appreciate it. So that's the type of warfare we're dealing with
Yeah,
right
right.
now. And into this mix, born into this, also
Born into this.
massive political changes and huge religious reformations. Because in 1521, so not long after our story begins, and during this man's life, we have the Diet of Worms, which was not when all the worms got together and decided what to eat. A diet is a meeting, and that's when they said, Martin Luther, you suck, and they put like a ban on him, and we're going to kill him. So we have the beginnings of the Reformation are throughout this. We have Martin Luther doing his preaching, and that divided all of the princes of Germany to basically fight each other and start wars. And eventually we get into like the 30 Years' War, which we've talked about, and that led to the Peace of Westphalia. So he is in this very wild time.
The 1500s. What a time to be
1500s.
alive.
So he's born in 1480, and most of our source is going to be using his autobiography. And the reason I chose it is it's extremely well written. He wrote it all during his retirement. He lived to retirement, so spoilers.
He lived.
And a lot of guys didn't. But what I love about this is we get a guy's firsthand view of all of these events. Basically, we have this imagery of the knight on horseback and how they lived. We have this idea of how people operated during these times and how they moved and what mattered to them. But this is his firsthand accounting of things. It uses his own language, his idioms, his expressions, which are oftentimes hilarious. He's got a dirty mouth. He's a German knight. The German knights are very different than like the French knights who created the idea of chivalry.
Yeah.
German knights seem to be much more pragmatic and much more honest.
Okay.
Because the French knights are like, well, I killed him, but it was for chivalry.
Oh, sure. Amazing.
And the Germans are like, yeah, he was a jerk, so I stabbed him in the face. What? Like, what do you want from me? It's very honest, and he doesn't ever, like, make himself like, I killed 6,000 men,
sure.
and I was the most heroic man ever. It was eventually used by Goethe, who's a famous playwright, and he wrote a play about it.
Oh.
It's kind of immortalized.
What's that play?
It's just called Guts von Berlichingen. I think he's transposed into more modern times. It's contemporary times because it was written in the 19th century.
Okay.
And I think that's how it goes. He's like, well, in my day, this is how we did stuff.
That's fun.
He's a very interesting.
Check that play out.
It must have been like he's kind of like an interesting, almost folk hero, because of all the stuff he does in his life. So,
let's get to it.
Let's get to it. When he's younger, he's sent to spend time in school. So his family had enough money to go to an actual school, not just a tutor. But usually, how schools worked at this time is there was a educated person who may have gone to a university or was just considered very smart and had a lot of books. And by a lot of books, 10, because books are really expensive.
Sure.
He was sent though to this guy to study under him, and he did that for about a year, and then school wasn't really for him. He appreciated the learning, but he cared a lot more about riding and horsemanship. That was way more fun for him.
Okay.
He started to show an aptitude for what would be soldierly skills. He was strong. He liked to run and be on horseback, wear armor. He loved all of that stuff. So his parents are like, oh, okay, well, we should probably focus on that.
Yeah, okay.
Rather than waste an education on a guy who doesn't care about it, we've got other kids. They can get educated.
But he obviously learned how to read and write.
Yep. He learned how to read and write, which is a vital skill.
Write a book.
Now, a big part of this is that it was his mother who wanted all of these things for him. And he says, as my mother requested, so it would be. So mom was in charge.
Boy.
Mom was in charge. And he loved his mother, apparently. And apparently his dad loved his mom because he was like, yeah, your mother wants this, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And she had a good point. She wanted him to visit different people and to travel around so he got to know things outside of his own home. The cure for ignorance is travel, that kind of a thing. And she had him learn at a young age helping your relatives was very important. That was a valuable thing, and that if you say you're going to do something, you do it. She instills all of these concepts with him, and then his dad is also reinforcing those ideas and really supporting his militant bent. Like, you want to fight?
Go ahead, kid.
This is an opportunity for you, guy. Like, you can do anything you want. Eventually, he becomes a squire for his cousin Conrad for 3 years. That's usually around like 14, 15, you start becoming a squire because your body's starting to develop more. You're able to handle the physical rigors.
All boys and girls go through the change becoming a squire.
Yep. He went to, during this time, he went to the Reichstag. Now, the Reichstag is kind of like a parliament for Germany.
Okay.
The emperor does not have say over everything. He cannot say, I do all the things and you all have to listen to me.
Yeah.
The electors, who are the most powerful nobles in the land, and there were like 7 of them, they control the biggest counties, the biggest chunks of land.
Were they elected?
They were called the electors because they elected.
Oh, tricky.
The emperor. They select who the next emperor is.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So you have to be good to at least 4 of them, because otherwise you don't get.
Yeah.
And I think actually it had to have. They all had to agree. There was no.
Yeah.
Majority rules, because that would cause division.
Right.
They had to have a unanimous decision on who the next emperor
important
is.
job, picking emperor.
So it's a big deal. Yeah. These guys are all powerful men, though. They're super wealthy. They have armies, and you have to respect them. They have knights at their beck and call. They just have to stamp their feet, and an army shows up, kind of a thing. So you want to meet these guys.
Yeah, okay.
The Reichstag is the place to do that. This is where they all sit down and they hash out everything, ranging from the marriages, because you didn't want one family to marry too many powerful people into it, because they'd control everything.
So they could decide
They could
You're not
are
getting
they
married?
could. I mean, they again. This is discussed, right? So if you're a powerful guy and you want to marry your son to this girl,
Yep.
and she's going to inherit her dad's land, this makes you very powerful. I, as another elector, would go, I don't want you to be that much more powerful. I would rather you marry to somebody else.
But they're really in love.
Or if you marry her to your son, then I want your daughter to marry my son so that we have a give and take, a
That's
balance. It's all about balancing acts with these guys.
You can have her. She's ugly.
They also would handle feuds. So if, so you've got this guy who works for you. He's a local lord, and he's been raiding into this other elector's lands. We need to put a stop to that.
Yeah.
Is there a way we can do that without them just killing each other? We have a conversation about it. We can pay compensation in coin or land or goods.
Yeah.
We can solve this.
Pigs.
And it did boil down to sometimes just cattle. They're like,
Nice.
yeah, cattle. Horses were common for trade goods because
To be
horses were
clear,
expensive.
pigs are not cattle.
No, they are livestock.
Make sure.
Yes.
On the
They're-
same
I mean, they're
page.
little hoofed critters, but they're not bovine.
Hoofed critters.
They're hoofed critters, but they're not. I think bovine is the
Yeah,
cattle.
okay.
But chattel. Would you say chattel? Anything that's like a living thing that
Maybe.
you just own is
Sure.
chattel. Like, I don't know.
I've heard the
Anywho.
word. I just don't know how to use it.
Yeah, I know that it applies to certain types of slavery, and it's a not good thing. It's
Yeah.
treating things like livestock of all
Okay.
kinds. I think it's chattel. It's not good.
Right.
It's not as bad if you're referring to pigs, I guess. Or is it? Depends if you're a vegan
Or if you're a pig.
or a pig.
We apologize to all the pigs watching.
We do apologize to all the pigs. There's some very angry ones in
Sorry.
Animal Farm. We're like,
Yeah.
hey,
Napoleon.
yeah, watching you, Napoleon.
Little
book.
George Orwell deep cut
Such
for
a
folks.
good book. Anywho's moving on. So the Reichstag is where they determine all these things,
Yeah.
and these can last for months. This is, and unlike
It's like a convention. It sounds
unlike
nice, actually.
some forms of Congress, not pointing out anybody, not pointing out any parliament in particular, but they had to get stuff done or it didn't work. So these guys, who are the most powerful people in the country, realized they had a moral responsibility to their people, and at the end of the day, it was just pragmatic to take care of it for their own well-being.
Yeah.
So you've got the Reichstag, and Konrad von Berlichingen, who's the uncle or cousin,
Cousin.
he's like a second cousin. He's old. He's much older.
Okay.
He has Guts following him around to all these things. So Guts gets to meet all of these really powerful people, including the Kaiser, the Emperor.
Kaiser.
That's what they called him, is the Kaiser, which is
Kaiser.
from Caesar.
Okay. Oh, okay.
That's why they say Kaiser, because technically I think it would be pronounced Kaiser, because C is a hard sound in
Yeah.
Latin. We just are used to Caesar. So he meets all of these guys, and it's kind of this education. It's a super educational period for him because he gets to see how all the nobles work, all the intricacies of wealth and power, and how they handle things, and that sometimes even the most powerful guys have the most petty of disagreements.
Oh.
So he's learning and he's growing through all of this.
I suppose if you got, a lot of power, what else you got to do?
Exactly.
Be petty.
Yeah. And also, this isn't a time of, the internet and all these other things where you can just shrug things off or see how everybody's acting. If somebody insults you personally, you have to handle it immediately. Otherwise, they go and tell everybody, this guy's a coward, this guy's a weakling. That makes you look bad. It spreads like wildfire. And this is a time where if you start something, someone will finish it. Like, if you sit there, you can't tweet at somebody and run your mouth.
Yeah.
If you run your mouth to them, they're allowed to kill you, or at least be violent towards you.
Wow.
Now, there are checks and balances. If you work for a powerful lord and you run your mouth at me and I kill you because you ran your mouth, that lord can now have a feud with me.
Sure.
So that's why you have to be very careful about a feud.
Yeah.
Feuds are an official thing. You hand a letter to somebody and say, I declare a feud.
Ooh.
That gives them time to
Do you slap
prepare.
them with a...
That's a duel.
Oh, okay.
And they don't slap with a glove. They pull out a sword. These are high stakes feuds.
Right.
You beat the snot out of the guy
Slap with a sword.
publicly. Yeah, that's legit.
Okay.
So you have all of this stuff going on, and he's seeing how this all works. Eventually, his cousin passes away of either illness or natural causes. Guts takes some time off to go see his family. And then he joins up with Friedrich I, who is the Margrave of Ansbach. Ansbach is a region, a Margrave is a powerful lord.
Margrave of Ansbach.
Now, he treats this guy for the rest of his life, so he's 17 now. He treats this guy as like his first master. He's super loyal to the county of Ansbach, the township. He's loyal to Friedrich. Anytime Friedrich needs anything, he just shows up. That's his view on it. This guy raised me up from my family service to elevated to work for a Margrave, which is a big deal. So he's very, very loyal to this man. He serves under him under a captain named Paul von Ansbruck. So there's that just means of Ansbruck. Okay. So this captain, so we'll just call him the captain. He's kind of put in charge of his training and how he's supposed to like fit into the military unit and everything like that. They go on a small campaign in Burgundy because, again, they're all at war with everybody else all the time. And this campaign is literally, they like march into the area, they march past a city, they do some raiding, they burn down a town after everybody left because they're like, we don't want them owning this when they come back. And they took all the food, and then they just kind of go home. Some of the wars don't actually have bloodshed. Sometimes it's just destruction of property.
Sometimes I just have a war for fun.
Sometimes you're like, I guess we go home. Okay. Everybody just gets tired and hungry, and then they go home. Now, he did this without much pay. The idea of pay was he's a squire. It's his apprenticeship.
Are they paid by spoils of fighting?
Oftentimes, yes. Like you loot a city, they split up the loot or whatever you can carry. That kind of stuff happens all the time. That's a very common source of pay. Formal pay was a thing for mercenary units. If you were a lord, it was expected for somebody to serve you. It was an honor thing. And Guts is very much about like the honor of serving higher lordships. And that was the thing that his mother instilled in him, especially family. It's a big deal. If it's at all related to him, he's like, to the death. I got your back.
Yeah. So he's like Vin Diesel.
Yeah. Family. It's all about family. Now, he finds out that his father's passed away. Again, this is 1500s. And people don't live forever.
I thought his father passed away again.
Again, he died twice. He died once, he came back 3 days later, and then he died again. He's a German Jesus. His name was Jesus von Berlichingen. Jesus von Berlichingen. So he goes home because he has to take care of his family, and that's a requirement for him. Yeah. His master lets him go. He makes sure mom and siblings are taken care of, and then he comes right back. Right. While he's with his master, he gets in a fight over hair. A Polish knight had very nice hair and took very good care of it. And apparently part of the treatment was you use like egg whites in the hair to make it glisten over time, and it's
probably smelled great.
Probably, yeah. I imagine he just reeked. Lots of perfume. Well, apparently Guts brushed against his hair, and it made the guy mad. So he picked up his dinner knife, got up, and tried to stab Guts. Guts pulled out his sword and just bashed him over the head with the pommel and knocked him out. And then he's like, "That'll teach you, dummy." And he walks away.
Yeah, I got egg on my sword.
I got an eggy hand. He gets in trouble for this.
Yeah, well, I think so.
Because that guy's master is powerful, and he's like, you beat up my guy. And
he's got nice hair.
The guy pulled out a knife and tried to stab me.
Yeah, but have you seen his hair?
And they're like, well, you're under arrest. No, I'm not. And he just leaves to go to his master, to talk to his master about it. He's like, hey, I defended myself against this guy. This is nonsense. He's like, yeah, but the politics of the time, that guy's master is very powerful, and he has to punish you somehow. We'll plead your case to the prince of the area, see what he says. And the prince is like, I have to punish him at least a little.
Cut off his hair.
So what he does is he says, we're going to lock you in a tower for 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
We've imprisoned you. It's basically, all right, sit down. You're done.
It's hardly enough time to get through all the paperwork.
Yeah, right? It almost doesn't seem... And Guts thinks this is the dumbest thing ever. He's like, I didn't do anything wrong. The guy tried to stick me for bumping into him. And I gotta go to jail? What about him? He tried to kill me. And his friend's like, yeah, that guy tried to kill him. Yeah. What? Does he get punished? And they're like, no, he's fine. So Guts is livid, and they are bringing him into the tower, and they're just going to sit him in this room for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And the prince hands him a velvet robe and says, because it's cold in there, it's a dungeon, you know, why don't you wear this? And
I
Guts...
don't know. This dungeon's taking a different turn.
Yeah, and Guts just looks at him and says, what should I do with... Quote, this is from his book. What should I do with this? It's all the same to be in the shit or next to it. So it's like, I get to wear the fancy robe, and I'm in a dungeon. And then he's like, besides, I'm going to be in here for 15 minutes, so it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
But it just shows the point of, he's like, it's the principle of the thing. This is stupid, but I'm going to do it, but it's dumb.
This, I'm sorry, this might be a dumb question right now. Well, do they have minutes?
Yes.
Do they have like
They have like quarter hours. They usually, originally, like, they started
clocks
to gauge
yet?
it off the sun. They have water clocks. They have hourglasses. They've, just like ours, they've started to figure that stuff out. They can just sit there and count.
Okay.
I think it was basically like they're just, it's been like a little bit.
Okay.
But that's how he phrased it, is 15 minutes.
Right. No, I
And
just
so-
trying. I didn't know when.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know when time was...
when does time start being a thing?
That's a future This Week in History. When
figure
did
it out.
time start to be a thing in smaller measurements?
Yeah.
So they measure it out, and probably with a chicken when it crows. I don't know.
Sit there till those chicken crows.
They have a guy who's very regular with having to go to the bathrooms. Every 15 minutes he's got to pee, as long as he's drinking water.
Okay.
That's their guy.
Okay.
I have no idea.
It's like a human water clock.
Yeah, he's a human water clock. It's 15 minutes. Jim has to pee. Okay. So they let Guts out, and he's like, stupid Polish
Take
guy.
your robe.
And he leaves.
Yeah.
He runs into the Polish guy again. And-
Accidentally, I think.
well,
he
probably not. It was it was in like the same area.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Uh,
Did I mess your hair again?
And a second Polish guy was going to stab a friend of his, and he just got in the way, and he said, if you try, I'm going to hit you so hard you'll end up with the plague. And the guy was like, I've never heard that threat. I'm good.
Okay.
And he just walks away. But then while they're in the town, like, I think it was like a Polish entourage with, I think it was the Duke of Lithuania.
Ooh.
So he would have Polish guys with him, was in the region. So this guy was a guy from his household. He sees the same guy. He's like, you made me go to jail. And he chased the guy, and the guy had to like hide. And he's like running through the city being chased by this big angry German. So that was and he's like, I could never find the guy again. I swear to God, if I would have put him in the ground.
Some werewolf of London.
Yep.
His hair was perfect.
His hair was perfect. So back to campaigning. He goes back to work for Ansbeck, the Margrave. And they go on they're still campaigning against Burgundy and against other people. The Kaiser is part of this now. So he's involved. He's like, we are going to show everybody how strong we are. The Kaiser's on our team. Actually, this isn't the Burgundy campaign. This is another battle with the Swiss.
Okay.
For some reason, probably because it's the only fortified building in the area, a bunch of Landsknechts had taken shelter inside a church. And they're shooting out of it with crossbows and guns.
I'm sure the people in the church were happy about that.
Well, the people in the church were probably just all the these Swiss soldiers.
Okay.
So I think they didn't like...
There was probably a priest who's like,
There might have been... Can you not? I said...
mind the tapestries.
Yes, don't break the window and go! He broke such stained glass. That's so expensive. So Guts has this great line where he says, like, well, we moved around a lot because nobody likes standing still and getting shot. So they surround this church, and they're fighting with the Swiss, who have vowed that they will not surrender. And the Swiss soldiery is known for this. Like, if they are fighting, they don't stop. If they've sworn an oath, they will fight until they're all dead.
Yeah, they're like Pringles.
He mentions that there were other people in the church, spoiler, and one of them was a child.
Oh.
So a Landsknecht literally falls out of the building, so he lands, because it's on fire now. He jumps out of the building with this child in his arms, and then the child escapes. Huh. The soldier dies, but the kid lives. And one of these Bavarian knights, another region in Germany, he's like, that was really, really cool and brave.
Yeah.
I adopt this child. So he took in the child. He's like, okay, this is messed up. Like, this is escalated. This was not part of... That wasn't cool. These guys are awesome. I don't like this. Kid. Sorry, kid. I'm going to raise you in my home and you'll be taken care of. Yay!
That makes me happy.
Yeah, I'm great now. I think it was an infant.
Oh, okay.
Baby! So it didn't know. It just, for some reason, has a fear of churches, fire, and falling.
Yeah.
Eventually, the fire starts to rage. They kill all the guys inside, and a bunch of knights stay to loot the church and get cooked.
Oh, well, it serves them right.
And Guts is outside like, you guys are stupid. It's on fire. Why are you in there?
Yeah.
But he's not in charge, so he leaves
Okay.
with his guys, and they're like, okay, well, this didn't go great.
Could have gone worse.
This
I
could have
suppose.
gone worse.
I'm not sure how.
I'm not sure how.
But it could have.
An entire wing of the army gets annihilated, and 2 guys come back, and that's all that's left. And like, this did not go well. And basically, the campaign is a failure, and everybody goes home.
Okay.
Uh,
I say don't attack a church.
don't attack a church. They wanted the church, but. So Guts takes some time off, and he says, 1 year after this, I started wearing armor again, which is his expression of saying, I started to get into trouble.
Oh, okay.
You don't wear armor unless you're going to fight.
Sure.
He meets up while he's riding around with his brother with a fellow named Thaliker von Massenbach. Now, Thaliker is famous for being a notorious bandit. He would just ride around, and this isn't like a Robin Hood, where it's light gear. These guys wear full armor and gallop around and kidnap people and sell them, and that's considered perfectly not acceptable of the time, but it's going to happen.
Hey, what are you going to do?
So he and Thaliker join up and declare war against the Duke of Württemberg. So he's a duke, which means he's really powerful. Like, he's just shy of an elector.
Okay. Why?
The guy, Thaliker, had a beef with him.
Oh.
It was just a feud thing.
Okay.
Thaliker probably did something stupid because he's a thief. He's a famous bandit.
Yeah.
And the Duke was really like, "Hey, you're in trouble. Stop stealing my stuff." And Thaliker's like, "Fine, I'm going to steal more of your stuff." So he declares this war, basically, against him with 6 guys, including Guts and his brother.
Okay.
Guts is like, this is a great time to be an adventurer. I'm going to ride around.
Sure.
And he describes this as it was the first time he wore a full knight's armor. Before this, he was always a squire or like a lesser noble. Now he's in the full plate. He's riding around, and he's a knight. So a knight could do this kind of thing and still be considered a noble knight. So all of this, it's nobility, and they're not allowed to do that, and they protect the peasants. Lie. He mentions how they captured like 9 rich merchants,
Oh.
and their whole thing was capture them and sell them back to their family for a ransom.
Okay.
And that's how they made a living.
Yeah.
He did this for 2 years. Their numbers grew. Thaliker had different guys all over the place. He had this big gang. And eventually they're raiding all the way up to the city limits and then running away. Like, they're not besieging things. They don't have the numbers for that. But it's just a thorn in the side. And because all of these princes are at war with each other or foreign countries, and they have all these big obligations, they can't be like, send 100 knights to crush these 6 guys. They don't have people for that, really.
Oh.
So they're hoping to have like locals handle it. And because they stay very mobile, they're able to do basically whatever they want until they corner themselves. Eventually, Guts' uncle, his mom's brother, invites him to visit. So he goes and visits his uncle, and his uncle's like, stay a while. Guts mentions frequently that when he visits these nobles, they have a clothing made for him. They have the tailor come out and
nice.
make clothes. Apparently, that was a gesture of welcome and goodwill, and you're part of my service now, so I'm going to outfit you accordingly.
Who doesn't like a nice new pair of pants?
Exactly. So he comes in, and his uncle's like, here's this. And by the way, I'd love for you to stay with me for a while. Because he doesn't want him joining up with Thaliker anymore.
Oh.
Because this guy's a bandit, and he's going to get his nephew killed. So he's like, dude. He handles it in like the best way possible. And Guts is like... So he didn't say anything about it, but I think it was to keep me out of trouble and not end up dead. So he stays, and he's like, okay, cool.
Oh, yeah.
A couple months later, he finds out that the Margrave of Ansbach is in trouble again. He's at war with the city of Nuremberg. And he's like, I gotta go help him. He's my first master. And his uncle's like, oh, that's fine. That's fine. That's an honor thing.
But he just runs around whoever there's fighting and like,
It's literally like he says, he goes to one spot and there's no fighting. He's like, I came here to fight. Like, he always says, I came here to ride.
Yeah.
Like, let's ride. Like, that's his expression. I came here to ride. Like, we're supposed to go and kick butt.
Yeah.
I'm a soldier. That's what I do. I soldier. Why am I not soldiering?
Okay.
Okay, I guess I'll go find some other place.
Okay.
You guys aren't giving me a job. I think that's why he joined up with Thaliker for a while. Is because he's like, there's nobody to kill. It's like in I don't know if you've seen Major Payne with Damon Wayans. Very funny movie, very ridiculous. And he's this great soldier, and ain't there nobody left for me to kill? No, Major Payne, you killed them all. Oh, like that's kind of what he's like. I want to go and fight all these people.
Yeah.
But Ansbeck has this huge rivalry with Nuremberg and this is the start of Guts's, because this thing lasts for a long time. He makes like a personal feud against a city.
Oh.
He just never really gets over this. So they go to war, and they're using the similar tactics that we talked about with Jan Hus and the Hussite Rebellion, and Jan Ziska was the warlord who fought in that. And he was the blind warlord who had the wagon forts.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the German factions use these because they're like, oh, we can move artillery and crossbowmen pulled in these fortified wooden wagons with bits of iron on it, and they can shoot out, and it's just like, it's kind of like a tank. And then we follow that with horsemen and foot soldiers, and and we can always make little circles of it. During this battle, Guts is like, okay, I've seen this used before. If we can prevent the wagons from circling and making a wagon fort, we limit what they can do.
Sure.
So he rushes out and basically dives under the horses of the front wagon and takes out the horses.
Oh, horses.
Don't know if he kills them or just cuts the reins. I like to think he doesn't kill the horses.
Let them run away.
Because then he's like, new horses! Because horses are valuable. That'd be like, I just jumped out and I killed a Corvette. Great.
Yeah.
Or, I took the Corvette and now it's mine.
Yeah. And horses don't care what side they're on.
Right. Either way, he gets the horses to stop, so the wagon train is not able to circle. It basically gets halfway around. It's this fierce battle. They've been doing this all day. It is hot. Guts repeatedly talks about when the temperatures rise, because he'd be like, we were riding, and these 3 Burgundian soldiers and 2 Landsknechts passed out from the heat. And then the knights were all dying. Like, they just passed out. In this battle, he says, almost as many guys died from the heat as from battle. It was overwhelmingly hot and dusty and gross. Don't fight in summer. Yeah. But you can't fight in winter. It's too cold. So you get like 2 months a year.
A nice autumn day.
You gotta find it. Yep. August is bad. October's great.
Okay.
Best, like, September's wedding season. August is war season.
And the colors are changing.
Everything's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so pretty.
Pumpkin
It's nice
spice.
to die under the changing of the leaves. It's great. Not as stark as a winter where there's just blood everywhere. And you're like, oh, that the blood on the snow, that's really...
Fall's really everyone's favorite time of year. Yeah.
Yep, fall and then spring. Yeah, because then your body can be used by trees and stuff that are growing.
Okay.
Helps with the planting. Sure. I don't know. Either way, he just talks about how miserable it was. But he during this fight, he does this really good job. This is in 1500. What's interesting is that Captain Paul shows up again, the guy who trained him.
Captain Paul.
And he said, we got along so well, we wanted to invite each other to the church. That's literally what he says. The translation is super simplified. We got along poorly. Inviting somebody to the church is saying, I'm going to kick your butt. Like, come on over here, and we're going to go to church together. Because 2 warriors, like, we're going to go to church. Their church is fighting. That's how they worship. They like that kind of an expression. Yeah. So again, Guts has this really colorful language. Yeah. He's like, oh yeah, we got on great. We wanted to go to church together. And they're like, oh, you want to kill each other. Yeah. After this battle, though, Captain Paul, not knowing that Guts is in the room, is like, those 2 Berlichingen boys, because Philip is along, the brother, were amazing today. Did you see what they did? It was amazing. And Guts is like, they're talking about me. You see that? He's talking about me. So that was his payment, he thought.
Oh, okay.
He volunteered for the war completely. He rides off with like 4 horses, because you might lose a horse under you. And he tells the Margrave, I'm here to fight. And the Margrave's like, nobody told you to be here. I don't need you. I don't want you to risk yourself. He's like, this is an honor thing. So one of 2 things happens. You can just have the horses because you need them for your war effort, or you can have me and the horses, and I'll fight for you. I don't want anything in return. And the Margrave's like, okay.
Just tell him I did a good job. Can I use you on my resume?
He doesn't even ask for that.
Oh.
He just wants to show that he's worthwhile. So every time like soldiers have to go out on raids or fights, Guts is always volunteering.
Real go-getter.
Real go-getter. Not a suck-up, like just an active guy. He's always willing to go above and beyond when he was a squire. It's like he would saddle everybody's horses, not just his, because he'd see these other guys who were like real lazy. The other squires probably didn't appreciate it. Like,
Sure.
dude, you make me look bad. He's like, dude, you're 30 and suck at your job. He specifically mentions how there was a 30-year-old squire, and he's
Oh.
like, you should be a knight by now. Why are you so bad at your job? And he's like, the guy was just lazy, so I saddled his master's horse and the other guy's horses, and because I was young and I was bored. What else am I gonna do?
Okay.
You don't have video games, and if you show this kind of thing, you get knighted sooner.
Yeah.
So he's distinguished himself. He's praised by his rivals and enemies, and this is a huge coup for him as far as respect goes. In 1503, he goes back to join Thalacker again because he's bored. It's a really short time together. He only talks about like one brawl that he was involved in between different rivals, and then they kind of split up. 1504, there's the Bavarian War. This was caused by basically a succession over who should run this township of Landshut. And, you know, you've got two rival claimants to this land, so you fight.
Okay.
That's basically how it ended up. And Nuremberg is on the opposing side. So he's like, I hate Nuremberg. He also has friends on the opposing side.
Oh,
Because,
well.
again, this complex network of who's fighting for
Yeah, and
what.
if you travel around all over the place,
Yep.
sure.
And these guys they're all mercenaries, so it's inevitable they might end up fighting each other.
Yeah.
So
Hey, Jerry.
they
Sorry,
don't,
I'm on this side
they
now.
don't actually take violence towards each other very personally.
Oh.
He points out in a couple of instances where if guys had just gotten together and actually been able to fight it out, they would become friends afterwards.
Oh.
That happens with him with multiple people. Now at this battle, there are cannons shooting indiscriminately. And he's raising his sword to attack somebody on his horse, and the cannon shoots his sword, breaking it off and causing it to wrap around his hand and chop his hand off.
What?
It is the most wild shot ever. But he looks down and he just sees like the pommel sticking out of like his armor, and he's like, how did that happen? Then he looks up and his hand is just kind of hanging, still holding his weapon. And he's like, that ain't right. And the sword blade had like hacked into him because it shattered. I guess it must have bent back and chopped down into him.
It's really...
It's horrifyingly grotesque, but he describes it. At first he just says, well, I was wounded, and then he describes how everybody treated him while he was wounded.
Yeah.
He said he was gravely wounded. Well, he ends up, obviously, losing the hand because it's just kind of hanging there,
Yeah.
and he's miserable.
That's my sword fight
That's
hand.
my sword hand. It's his right hand. That's his sword hand.
Yeah.
I can't be a knight anymore. And then he's like, no. I've heard of other guys who've been able to survive.
Yeah.
So what he does is
I know
has...
the drummer from Def Leppard.
Yep. He has an iron hand crafted by a local smith and strapped to his wrist.
Okay.
And it's a fairly primitive thing, but it allows him to fix a sword into it. So he can still fight. Eventually, he has this advanced prosthetic that even today is considered advanced, where it is a multi-jointed, perfect replica of a human hand. It even has like knuckles on it,
Wow.
and is sculpted, and it fits all the way up to the forearm and is strapped on and ratcheted into place, and he can bend it so it can hold like a quill. And that's
Ooh.
how he even writes his memoirs. And here's a picture of it right here,
Oh.
because you can actually see it. In Germany, they have it at a museum. It's not at the Hornburg, which is his personal residence, but you can actually still see the Iron Hand of Gotz von Berlichingen, and he becomes from this day forward known as the Iron-Handed Knight, or the Knight of the Iron Hand.
Well, yeah.
He's the Iron Fist.
Sure.
Well, this does nothing but increase his prestige, because now he's a one-armed, iron-fisted knight
Yeah.
who, within like a year, is back out campaigning. And I'm sorry, if I lost my hand,
Yeah, I'd take some time off.
I might never go back into battle.
That's probably more
What does he do?
likely.
He's like, well, I'm just going to keep fighting. That's what I'm good at. Now, between now and the next big event of his life, he gets into 5 simultaneous feuds, including with a bishop. And his plan is to capture this bishop from his own home because he hates this guy,
Okay.
and then ransom him back. And like the feud just escalates and escalates and escalates because it starts out over something petty, like they always do, and then it grows and grows and grows. He starts hiring guys. He's like, "You want to go fight this guy?" And they're like, "Great." He sends one of his men to go and recruit troops, and the guy tells the recruiting people, like the ones he's hiring, the full plan.
Oh.
So they go and tell the bishop, and when Guts shows up to capture the guy, he's not there.
Ah.
And like while he was riding to capture the guy, he met the bishop's brother. He's like, "Oh, I could have captured him, but I'm going after his brother. I don't need to worry about this." And then he gets there and he's like, "Crap! Oh, I could have captured this other son of a gun." So it takes him a little bit. Eventually, he does capture the bishop. He ransoms him off. He talks about this. There are all these really interesting times where he just kind of rides into town, and because people don't have photographs, if you don't wear your coat of arms, people don't know who you are. So he rides into town once, and it's an enemy town.
Yeah.
And he's just like, "So, what's going on?" And he goes to the tavern, he's drinking with guys, and they're hanging out. And one of his
They didn't recognize the Iron Hand?
probably wearing a gauntlet.
Okay.
The Iron Hand would definitely stick out. Yeah. He just walks around like this. I'm a guy. Bartender.
Clank. Yeah.
He's the inspector from Frankenstein, from Young Frankenstein. He has a guy with him who has a beef with this city, and the dummy hangs his coat of arms like amongst the group, and he never told them, "Yeah, I have a beef with these guys." So they basically get driven out of town and almost get killed because this idiot doesn't tell them, "Yeah, the whole town hates me."
Oh.
And Guts is like, "So I thought the guy was a stand-up guy, and then I found out he's a moron." So that was great. Kick him out of the party and continue with my feuds, fighting all these different guys, waging personal warfare. And his idea of waging personal warfare is sometimes it's to attack other groups of knights and soldiers, but it is a lot of like capturing wealthy peasants and landowners, merchant caravans. He captures an entire caravan once with like 10 wagons in it. He's just like, "Bye now." And to highlight how he sees these things is he captures all the wagons. Then he's like, or he's going to capture the wagons, and he realizes it's on a friend's land.
Oh.
So he's like, "Okay, so here's the deal. I have a feud against where these guys are from.
Yeah.
I want to attack this caravan. It's on your land.
Yeah.
Is that going to cause a problem?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, but if you capture him on this road, that's on the edge, and I can be like, oh, no,
sure.
and it's fine." So he's got this weird sense of honor where it's as long as they're his allies, he is completely 100% loyal. He does everything he can to support them. But if you're an enemy, there's no rules. He's got these other situations where he's really like daring. His friend is going to plan he's got his own little raid planned. It's like his cousin, and he's going to attack these guys. He's like, I don't think I can pull off the feud. They got reinforcements coming in. Guts is like, just go, man. Just go. Because I'll handle the reinforcements.
Oh.
They're riding into this town to conduct this raid to capture their enemies. He goes to the ship that the enemies are on, which has cannons all over it. He's like, "Hey, are there any guys from our rival territory?" And they're like, "Yeah." And he's like, "All right, all you guys who aren't from the rival territory, get off the boat. You're safe." And they're like, "You won't kill us?" He's like, "No, we won't kill you. Then there's tons of us. We could kill you, but we don't wanna." And he's like, they all pile off the boat, and there's so many of them, he doesn't expect it. And he's like, "Oh God, I'm so glad they believed me." And he gets all those guys off the boat. He doesn't touch them.
Yep.
They capture the guys who were the enemy soldiers, and then they steal all their goods, fill like 20 wagons full of stuff, and that's the end of the fight. Nobody has to die. He finds clever ways of avoiding warfare when he can.
Oh, that's nice.
In 1512, he's back fighting Nuremberg. He kicks the crap out of some guys. He captures some people, and the emperor puts an imperial ban on him, which is like, you're an outlaw. You're losing title, and you're in trouble. He has to pay off 14,000 guilder, which is gold coinage, to remove the ban. In 1518, he gets another ban after he raids a city. And the emperor's like, "All right, enough." In 1519, he serves Württemberg, who was the guy who Thaliker hated, and he fights against the Swabian League, who are a band of provinces who hate a lot of people. And he's in this siege, and they're going to take over the city, and they're like, "Do you want to surrender?" And he said, "Your general can lick my ass." And that is thought to be the origin of the terms and the phrasing of "kiss my ass."
Oh, okay.
They refer to it from this point on as a Swabian salute in Germany, because that's how you talk to the Swabians. "Kiss my ass." And he has variations on it, and he's just like, yeah, that's great. Why don't you kiss my ass while you're at it? Like, He just doesn't care.
Huh.
He eventually has to surrender, and they break the terms of the surrender and imprison him, make him swear an oath that he won't fight him. In 1525, he backs a peasants' rebellion because he feels like they need a knight to lead them so they don't go crazy. He doesn't believe in the cause, but he's like, if we can control the damage, that'll at least do something. And then he's like, these guys just don't listen to anybody. And he retires to his castle. After the war's over, he surrenders himself to the empire. And they're like, oh, okay, we get kind of what you're trying to do. And since it kind of fits into the whole feuding thing and everything else, and our laws aren't like, this was treason, because you didn't actually like attack any cities or anything. And you mostly just were like, guys, I'll go this way. It's great. They acquit him. But while he's dealing with all this, the Swabian League invites him to have a discussion, and then they capture him, hold him in prison for 2 years, make him swear another oath, all again in violation of treaties, which perpetuates more feuds. In 1528, that's when that happened. He's freed in 1530, and he just decides to stay at his castle at the Hornburg, which he bought outright from all of his proceeds from being a mercenary, kidnapping people, being a knight, all this other stuff, and he just stays there for 10 years. He's still considered extremely effective. Now, he's 60 years old. Charles V Habsburg, who we've talked about before, he's this great emperor who rules all of Spain, all of Germany, the Netherlands, everything. He's the largest landowner almost in European history. He hires him on to fight against the Ottomans in a massive campaign. He hires him to fight in France in 1544, where he's actually considered an imperial knight. So he's not a mercenary at this point. He has landed gentry.
And he's in his 60s?
He's in his 60s. And he's going to war, not as an advisor, as a full-on, I'm in the thick of it with my iron hand, beating the snot out of people. After the campaign in France, he retires back to his castle. He has, at this point, had 2 different wives and fathered 3 daughters and 7 sons.
Wow.
So between fighting and making babies and doing all this other stuff, he's just running all over the place. And on the 23rd of July, 1562, he dies at the age of 81.
Wow.
Having this full life, getting his hand blown off, doing all this crazy stuff. And I just think it's absolutely fantastic that we have his words describing all of this. And you get like the cool local vernacular of how these guys talk.
Yeah.
It's much more humanizing, I think, rather than, they're all these faceless guys. He's one of the most famous knights of his time just by just pure audacity, just brazenness, but very honest about who he is and what he's going to do. He never engages in what would be
trickery and
he's really upfront about stuff. Like, he has to be kind of clever about stuff. So he'll put himself in danger. He doesn't send off other people to go do stuff, but he explains like the whole hostage taking process is really complex. Like, you capture a guy and you say, hey, you're a wealthy landowner or you're a wealthy merchant. And he talks about this one instance where he captures this older merchant and his son. Well, the older merchant he was worried about his health. So he says, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to send you home to get the ransom. Okay? And I'll keep your son with me because he's young and healthy. I'll take good care of him. He'll be fed. He's not going to get beaten up or anything like that. He's going to stay with me, stay at my residence. He'll be fine. I'm going to send with you one of my guys to help you. And I'm going to write this letter. If you run into any other of my guys, they will not harm you. They will actually help you out. And then you come back to me with the money and everyth's good. And that also ends our feud because it was part of a feud with another group. And then we're good. The guy then goes and turns over the soldier, this Guts' guy, and betrays the whole agreement. Now, Guts does not hurt the son.
He totally could.
He could. He has him in his power. He could do whatever he wants. But he's like, this is stupid. He ends up, the guy, like his soldier is smart, gets free. Guts is like about to lead this rescue. He's like, oh, you're free. Cool. He gets the guy back. He gets the money back. He trades the son back eventually. But it actually makes the merchant look like a jerk.
Yeah.
And Guts doesn't look bad because he just was following through on a feud. And he followed all the rules of it. And it's just really fascinating because it's not all these black and white, yes or no, honorable versus dishonorable. It's very subjective. But it seems like all these people were playing with similar rules. And the big thing was like, don't go to war on the peasantry. Taking prisoners is fine, but like he gets really violently angry at a friend of his because the guy starts beating up a prisoner. Oh. And he's like, what are you doing? And he's going to kill the guy because he's hurting this prisoner who's unarmed and tied up. And he's like, what are you doing? We already won. And the guy's like, oh, I don't like him at all. The only reason I don't kill you is because we have people around who don't want me to do it. But I swear to God, if you raise a hand again, I'm gonna cut your head off. Like, so Guts has this very specific sense of honor, and I just think it's fascinating. And then the whole Iron Hand thing is cool. One last thing is his legacy. There is a very famous, I know I'm out of time, I've been out of time. There's a famous anime and manga from Japan called Berserk. The lead character's name is Guts, and he ends up with an iron hand. And it is 110% based off of the concept of Guts von Berlichingen and being the iron-fisted knight. The hand even looks like it. It's designed to look like his hand, with the special caveat that it has a little cannon in it and all this other fun stuff, because it's an anime. You have to be ridiculous. But his idea is that this guy was a mercenary from his early childhood. He just liked to fight. He was really good at it. He has a very specific code. And another unfortunate thing is that there was if you look up Guts von Berlichingen, sometimes it makes you delve into Nazi stuff, because a unit of the SS was named the Guts von Berlichingen division. So the worst group of the Nazis used cultural heroes from German history, including Guts and two of his fellow contemporary knights, as names of different SS groups. So he's a fascinating guy, and that's the life of Guts von Berlichingen crammed into an hour.
Or so.
An hour and five. I could have gone on and on and on, because his later life is still pretty fascinating.
Well, then check out a book by his autobiography.
His autobiography is really
good
cool.
So give that a read. If you have any comments or suggestions for this, put them in there. If you don't subscribe to our page. I
apologize for mispronouncing some German words. We do a lot of stuff in Germany. I should just start studying German. It's a fascinating culture.
All right. So, and then join us again next week. Next week we'll be discussing the Battle of Cannae.
Cannae, yes, please.
Yeah, the Battle of Cannae, which is in BC times.
Yeah, we're going back to BC times. I'm not telling anybody what it is. August 2nd, 216 BC.
All right, be here. You can lick my ass. Bye.
Bye.